Research Center, and very importantly, he is the father of a currently serving Peace Corps volunteer. His daughter is serving in the Gambia at this very moment. Gene has been known to write some columns for the Raleigh News and Observer, and many of us like those columns. And let's put our hands together and give a big Peace Corps volunteer welcome to Gene Nichol.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here, and I mean that in the most literal sense. I'm not talking about etiquette. To be in such company. The way I think of it, those who have chosen to live out Václav Havel's definition of hope, which he described not as a prediction of success or a description of the world around us, but a predisposition of the spirit, a sort of habit of the heart. A conscious choice to live in the belief that you can make a difference in the quality of our shared and sometimes threatened lives. It is, after all, the nobler of contested hypotheses. So I am honored to be in your company, the Peace Corps. Man. My daughter, as Ivan mentioned, is in the Gambia as we speak, living in a tiny village of about 200 hours away from other volunteers, where no one speaks English. There is no electricity, no fans, no toilets. An agricultural volunteer, building chicken coops, working on clean water issues, changes in crops. It is amazingly hot, 6 hours from the capital, no internet, unfamiliar food and languages. She was part of the training group. She's been there, 14 months, something like that. She was part of the training group chosen for next year's folks. She told me last weekend that they were laughing because the trainers had been looking at one of these chat rooms put together by the new volunteers, complaining about their circumstance. They were reading out assembled messages, folks complaining about sometimes losing their air conditioning for as much as 30 minutes a night, or having to eat chicken 4 times a week, or having excruciating internet breakdowns. She said their favorite was a new volunteer who complained that she had to walk for 13 minutes to get a latte. She and her friends sent them back a brief note talking about an 8-hour donkey and gully trip and then a 4-hour plane ride to get the closest latte. I am the first to concede that I'm not sure I could have done what my daughter, Sora, is doing this day, and what you have done. So, my congratulations, and I fess up from the start that I am the only unworthy one in the room. I also want to add my congratulations to Learning Outside, my sort of Orange County folks, largely, right? Yeah. Okay. Giving kids, including low-income kids, experiences in the natural world that they wouldn't have otherwise, urging towards a lifetime commitment to stewardship, not unlike the Peace Corps itself. This is an especially notable achievement because many think that there is nothing natural whatsoever about life in Carborough. Learning Outside has proven I'm not going to be long, especially since I'm holding off our award winners. But I start oddly where my university always asked me to begin. And that is by saying I do not speak for the University of North Carolina. The university I love takes great solace when I offer it full opportunity to distance itself from me, which I do now formally and happily. It hardly seems necessary. I am these days barely allowed to speak at the University of North Carolina, much less for it. But the university wants you to know that when it comes to the General Assembly's war on poor people, on people of color, on women and the environment, on the LGBT community, it is strictly and fastidiously neutral. I, however, am not. The life will not be easy, John Kennedy said at the outset, but it will be rich and satisfying. You are, though you might not warm to this, or some of you will, you are in a principal way children of John Kennedy's Peace Corps, his vision of service and obligation. It is one not much announced and declared these days. We do recall, of course, not asking what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That's a shorthand, I suppose, kind of musty, out of date. Hardly in favor these days with the nation's greatest narcissist. But Kennedy said that his new frontier was not a set of promises, but a set of challenges. It sums up not what I intend to offer the American people, but what I intend to ask of them. Imagine. He emphasized what he called the discipline of self-government, what he referred to in his inaugural as the high standards of strength and sacrifice demanded in democracy. He used the term new frontier, he said, because the pioneers gave up their safety, their comfort, sometimes their lives, to build a new world. They were not captives of their own doubts, prisoners of their own price tags. Their motto was not every man for himself, but all for the common cause. He intended, Kennedy said, to ask the ablest of the country to make whatever sacrifice is required to bring to their government the best talents in the world to serve the national interest. Regarding public office as a public trust, he asked all citizens, in fact, to call forth their strengths and devote their energies to the betterment of all. The rich must be willing, he demanded, to use some of their riches more wisely. The privileged must be willing to yield up some of their privilege to a common good. The Peace Corps, he argued, is not designed as an instrument of diplomacy or propaganda or ideological conflict. It is designed to permit our people to exercise more fully their responsibilities in the great common cause of world development. Pursuing, as he often put it, even for his own life, the Greek definition of happiness. The full use of your powers along lines of excellence. Bearing the burden of a long twilight struggle, year in and year out, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, against the common enemies of man, tyranny, poverty, disease, and war itself. Kennedy often used John Winthrop's vision of a city on the hill, like Reagan would later. But when Reagan quoted Winthrop, it was hard to avoid the conclusion that the president envisioned an admiring world, honoring and envying the great American city on the hill. More free, more prosperous, more happy, more blessed than the rest of the globe. Kennedy always focused on the second half of the Winthrop quote. The eyes of all people are upon us. That meant, he said, We must be worthy of our power and exercise strength with wisdom and restraint. Quoting Edmund Burke, he said, "We sit on a conspicuous stage, and the whole world marks our demeanor. From those so fortunate, much is required." Almost lost notions of duty and challenge and obligation and sacrifice and demand, not lost to you, of course. Notions of struggle in a larger effort, larger even than our own horizon or tribe or perspective or ideology or pedigree, larger even than our own nation, our own nationalism. I spent some of last summer with Peace Corps volunteers in West Africa. It took me a long time to process it. I am processing it still. These young women and men astound. Not you, maybe, but me. For tiny stipends, living among the resilient but intensely impoverished people they serve, without electricity, toilets, running water, typically in makeshift huts, defenseless against the brutal African heat, mastering languages I had never even heard of. It's a great source of pride to see your youngest daughter fluently speak a language that you did not know existed. It helps you believe in evolution. Doing work that is neither partisan nor glamorous, building manageable chicken coops, planting and nurturing orchards, bringing potable water to isolated hamlets, introducing new crops and livestock, combating firsthand the challenges of AIDS, teaching hopeful if profoundly isolated students in dilapidated schools, committing to unfamiliar and gigantically challenging lanes, doing it largely on their own, with few nearby colleagues or available mentors, serve in the cause of humanity in what John Kennedy called the Hudson Villages of half the globe. I saw the strength, the openness, the skepticism of their faces, impatient with the excuses and failures of the past, dreaming broadly but focusing locally, embracing new cultures rather than disdaining them, convinced suffering is not alleviated by ideology. Their hearts are large. They deem sacrifice a virtue. And they are certain to the person that they have learned more from their hosts than the other way around. And they foster our national mission. As Colin Powell put it, we're strongest when the face of America isn't only the soldier carrying a gun, but also the diplomat negotiating peace, a Peace Corps volunteer bringing clean water to a village, or a relief worker stepping off of a cargo plane. In Donald Trump's world, perhaps, these young heroes are losers. They toil in obscurity. They come home mostly broke. They put others' comforts and prospects above their own. They don't want the world to fear America's power and greatness. Their patriotism causes them to use marked skills, boundless energies, and open arms to forge partnerships with the less generously blessed peoples of the globe. To our president, perhaps, as he tries last week to close AmeriCorps, they're chumps. For him, the only reason to deal with a place like the Gambia is to exploit its people and its resources. Winners take. They grow a bottom line. They produce bigger buildings and larger portfolios. All the world envies them. Character, selflessness, and service are not part of that framework. They never enter the calculus. They never have. Of course, we all choose our visions of what Americanism, of what the American promise actually is. That's why I'm so deeply honored to be in your company. We make our choices. We write our chapters. It is our joint and shared obligation, as Richard Royd used to put it, to achieve our nation. You've enrolled. You've enlisted. You have chosen to live out the path. You remind me, as my daughter does, of the old Methodist hymn that commands us not to be afraid to defend the weak because of the anger of the strong, nor afraid to defend the poor because of the anger of the rich. You wouldn't think that would be radical or culturally at odds with the mainstream, but it turns out that it is. Maybe it has always been. But congratulations and thanks. Thanks for your service in every possible ennobling sense. Robert Kennedy said not long before he died that the future will judge us on the extent to which we've used our gifts to lighten and enrich the lives of our fellows. History will smile on Peace Corps volunteers, who also will report that as they use their gifts to lighten and enrich the lives of their fellows, they themselves were enlarged and ennobled in return. Congratulations. Thanks for letting me spend a minute.